This is Hemet.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com /Friendly Atheist Podcast to support the show. I'll remember which website it is. And let me give a shout out to some of our more recent subscribers. They include Jace, Trisha S, Maisie C, Dorian D, Crystal G, Gavino V, Freethinker 215, Bumble Homestead, Malachite, Joseph M, Greg B, and Farhan J. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it.
Thanks, gang.
Some quick points of privilege. I will be at BahaCon.
Points of privilege?
I don't know.
You're bringing a weird energy today.
Sorry. BAHACon.com this weekend. That is in southwestern Ontario.
I'm still waiting for my invitation.
It is in the mail. Aaron Ra, Seth Andrews is
Jessica,
there. Jessica, I assume, will be there. Lots of cool people. You could check that out. Tickets are still available. And also, if you do your crosswords, Thursday night / Friday's crossword is mine. I managed to get one adult word in there.
Was it
very
fuck?
proud of myself. Yes. Somehow you have spoiled the puzzle and no one caught it. And they never will.
Oh, that's fun. I like those days because I get texts from random people like, is this your dude? They see your name and they're like, maybe there's many Hemet metas floating around. I don't know.
Right?
I don't
Who
know
knows?
Indian naming conventions.
So have fun with that. Mm-hmm. And I figured we would start this one with the funniest conservative commentary I heard in a while.
Are we going to talk about new VP now?
Oh, yeah, that happened this week, too. Here's what I like about Tim Walz. Tim Walz is the one I wanted her to pick, but I didn't think she would pick.
If you go back to the last episode, yes. I do not believe you said his name.
What did I say?
I don't know, but I'd never heard that name before.
Oh, no. I like him. I will tell you this about Walz. In Minnesota, he's been able to pass all this progressive legislation with razor-thin majorities in the House and Senate. And usually governors in that situation are like, I want to make sure I don't do anything stupid to flip like the seats anywhere. So let's take the most centrist, moderate thing possible.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing something he said, but he's like, if we have political capital, why are we saving it? No, burn it.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. Let's do some stuff. And so they've been able to, you've seen pictures of him signing legislation to make sure kids in public schools have free breakfast and free lunch. And that's just the beginning of it all. One thing I really appreciate about Minnesota is that they are one of the only states to have a secular government caucus.
Really?
You've heard of the Secular Coalition for America, which does lobbying work on behalf of atheists, agnostics, and all that. And that's a national organization. Only like Arizona and Minnesota, I think, have state-level versions of the same thing. And when I spoke to the people a couple years ago, the Democrats who are basically starting this thing, I'm like, are you guys worried? You have an election, you have a midterm election, or like the 2022 election coming up. Are any of you worried that being tagged with like the secular government caucus is going to hurt any of you? And they basically gave the same response that Walz has been giving, which is like, this is the right thing to do. We support church-state separation. I don't think this is going to hurt us with our constituents because they already know where we stand on this thing. And the fact that I've never heard this hasn't been a Republican rallying cry like, oh, look at these radicals. Like, no, it's been pretty innocuous. And again, like a lot of these caucuses, it's not that they do anything crazy, anything radical. They're just saying, look, we support church-state separation. We support fact-based policies and things like that. So Minnesota's been a good state. And Walz then, if he's like the leader of that party, it's a great pick. I didn't think she would go that. I thought she'd pick Josh Shapiro and take the safe route, and she didn't.
Like I said, I've not really heard his name, but I feel like the last few months especially, we've been kind of calling out Minnesota as like the place that they're doing good liberal laws that are actually actively helping people. And didn't he do the thing of like, oh, we don't have 10 commandments on our walls, but all our kids are fed or something like that?
He's probably tweeted about that somewhere. Yeah. again, it's a good play because he's likable. I don't know if you saw the first press conference they did in Philadelphia this week, but it was
Philadelphia.
Yeah, it was already scheduled ahead of time. They're just going through all the swing states. And it was great. Like, he's fun to listen to. A former teacher, a former football coach. Like, he knows how to talk to normies without sounding political and weird about it.
And he's super on the train of Republicans are weird, and we're going to call them weird. And that seems
he's also
to be...
the guy, not only did he start the weird thing, he started that. He also, after Kristi Noem shot her dog and like wrote about it in her book.
Oh my God, I forgot about
Tim
that.
Walz is the guy who goes on Twitter and he's like, this is a picture of what I do with my dog, and it's him holding his dog like they're awesome. And then all the other governors are like, yeah, this is me with my dog. Also, just saying like they are weird little freaks, and we're the normal ones who treat our pets with respect and love.
Yeah. God, that fucking lady,
He's
I forgot
just
about
abnormally normal.
He really is
used to seeing
aggressively
it.
normal. The first thing I saw about him was that in the same year he coached his football team to a state championship. He also founded the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, in his school.
He was the sponsor. The kid asked him, would you be the sponsor? And he said, like, you know, if a cis, straight, white guy football coach is the sponsor, that probably carries some weight with it, that this is a club that can get some respect. And so...
the art teachers need a break, you know? I'm really excited about him. He seems like a good one. Ben Shapiro, actually, I lied to you. The second thing I saw was the thing about coaching and the GSA. The first thing I saw was Ben Shapiro with just a picture of just a random fat guy I had never seen before. And it just said, the Democratic nominee, Chris Farley, who lives in a van down by the river. And it's like... you so deeply fucked up what could have been a slightly funny joke because Chris Farley didn't live in the van down by the river. That was
his character.
Matt
Foley.
Matt Foley, thank you. And also, Chris Farley's famously the most likable person in like American history. So I'm not sure if this is what you're going for. And also maybe if Trump is your nominee, don't call people fat.
I saw people this morning making fun of Tim Walz saying, you guys, you might think he was the head coach of that football team that won a state championship. He was just the defensive coordinator. It's like, yeah, he was a coach. He wasn't the only coach.
Oh, boy. Wow, they got him.
They got nothing on this guy.
Wow, we are embarrassed as a party that he was not the head coach. Which, truly, the fact that he's involved in football is my least favorite thing about him because I think football is morally maybe not great.
As far as church-state separation stuff goes, I haven't really heard much either way, but his history of legislating doesn't suggest anything except respect for church-state separation. So, man, it's so weird having talked about politics on this show for years and having written about it for many years. It is so unusual to see Democrats doing this many good smart things in a row. It's like, I don't...
Are you waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if they're Democrats, of course they're going to screw this up somehow.
Yeah.
How are they going to do it? Because they keep making semi-smart decisions that people like.
I mean, I think
AOC even said, Joe Manchin put out a statement saying, yeah, Tim Walz is a good guy. AOC is like, yeah, Tim Walz is a good guy.
Wow, you found the one guy that AOC
that unites the entire party somehow. Yeah. It's very unusual.
Listen, an avuncular straight white dude is just what this country needs to get back on track.
Who knew that the way to unite everyone was by choosing a white guy who looks old? But somehow we figured it out. It just wasn't
jovial.
Biden.
I'm excited? Question mark?
I know. Hopium. It's spreading.
Hopium?
Yep.
I'm
getting
sorry.
addicted.
Hope is so lost around here that we had to make up a fun new bit of a phrase.
Damn
Hopium.
Right. You're getting addicted to it.
I am.
How long will it last?
Oh, well, don't worry. The rest of my life is in shambles.
All right. There we go. So let me start with this story about a different conservative commentator who said something stupid, not named Ben Shapiro.
Oh.
So let me go back for a second.
So
Do you remember the brick Bible?
God.
Okay.
The what?
It was there was an artist who basically said, I want to make, let me write.
Oh, the Lego Bible.
The Lego Bible.
Okay,
it was called the Brick Bible.
Understand that.
I was getting to Lego in the next sentence.
I see.
But basically, maybe 2 decades ago.
Sure.
Someone said, I want to recreate the Bible scene. I'm a good photographer. I'm a good artist. I know how to use Lego bricks. Mm-hmm. That's the technical name for it. Mm-hmm. And so let me recreate all these scenes. And they were not just well crafted and then well photographed. They were funny because telling Bible stories, but without any filters, more or less.
Sure.
It's like, oh yeah, this is gory and this is disturbing. Oh, and when you create Lego characters who are committing incest, because that's a Bible story, it's kind of funny to read about it with that imagery because you're just not used to seeing it.
I like seeing the bear actually tear apart all of the children.
Oh, yeah, that was another story that was recreated.
That's my favorite part.
So the person who did this was Elby Sperling, and she created the website to do this years ago.
Elbie or
ELBE. Elby Sperling.
Okay.
And it became the
It was like
website.
LB Johnson.
The website she created became so popular that basically book publishers are like, let's turn it into a book. And it launched this best-selling series called The Brick Bible because they can't use Lego, don't own the rights to that. So they called it The Brick Bible. The Chicago Tribune once said the series, quote, goes beyond remarkable. It borders on genius.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. And what made it so compelling is that the stories were accurate. She went through the various books of the Bible and recreated it. These are not the sanitized versions you hear about in Sunday school where the bear mauling the kids might be taken out. Sometimes they are violent. Sometimes they are sexual. Sometimes they're really sexual because they had to be because that's what's in the Bible.
Yeah.
So Sperling herself is an atheist, but this was a work of art. This was not an attempt to try to convince people not to be Christians.
No.
But over the years, the images, they kind of step away from the time Sperling made all this stuff was a time when you saw those new atheist books coming out.
Sure.
So it'd be easy to say, oh, this is some clever / blasphemous attempt to get people to stop being Christian. I don't think that was actually her goal. Her goal was, this might be a fun project. And as someone, I know you crochet and stuff like knit.
Cross
stitch, same thing.
No.
That world of stuff.
Deeply not.
Elby was basically saying, well, I like doing this. It takes my energy and mind to do all this stuff. But I'm not interested in necessarily converting anybody. It's just, this seems fun. And it got to the point that the website had been around for so long, the books had been around for so long, that they actually started to be used in all earnestness in actual Sunday school classes and church services.
Funny.
Yeah. And not even ironically, they're just like, this does a cute,
It's an
clever way
illustration,
of illustrating these stories.
Well, because if she's truly just pulling out the stories and recreating them as they are written, it's kind of hard to call her out on doing anything besides depicting what's actually there.
Right.
It's not like she's kind of adding her 2 cents in. It's my understanding.
That's right. And she's not. And then this is one of the book publisher thing. Like, how can we get more out of this?
What? Capitalism?
I know. So they launched, the book publishers and Sperling, they launched the Brick Bible for Kids, another line of the same stories, basically saying, hey, why don't you sanitize some of this stuff? Take out the violent, worst parts of it. Or at least tell, like, for example, David and Goliath.
Be more selective about your stories.
Well, I'll tell you this. David and Goliath, obviously David kills Goliath, beheads Goliath, and takes him back, the head, severed head, back to the village.
Cool.
Now, in the Brick Bible,
metal.
that's a pretty, it's funny to read because the depiction of Goliath getting killed is very over the top. The severed head is very bloody. Well, the Brick Bible still tells the story, but it takes out a lot of the blood.
Got you.
There is actually a severed head in the Brick Bible for Kids, but it's just literally a Lego head.
Oh, God.
But it doesn't have the blood with it. It just tells the story.
Sure.
So that's the sanitized version. You know what I mean? Still tells the story, doesn't dwell on the violence or gore or sex, but it still tells the story.
And these are just like little vignettes. These aren't like stop motion type things. Okay.
Correct. These are literally individual images.
Got it.
And the reason she created the Brick Bible for Kids is that so pastors could, quote, display this website and share its stories as part of your religious services or education programs. That's the disclaimer on the website.
Okay.
Okay? So, all well and good. other things you should know about this before I get to what the conservatives said.
Oh, God.
Sperling announced she was transgender in 2015. So actually, a lot of these books were published under her dead name.
Oh.
But she actually published, I didn't realize this, she published her most recent Brick Bible book in 2018.
Oh, wow.
I hadn't been paying attention, but they're still coming out, like, after a while. So anyway, I want to repeat, the last book in the series, the most recent book, came out in 2018. But for some reason this week, the books came to the attention of a conservative commentator named Allie Beth Stuckey. And Stuckey we've talked about on this show because she's a conspiracy theorist who's like, yeah, I think dinosaurs are a hoax.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that is what she argued. She doesn't believe in dinosaurs. And she was shocked by this.
Steven Spielberg invented dinosaurs in the 80s, so he could write it. He could make his big movie.
That's right. She said to the audience of her show, I promise you will hate this Brick Bible. The episode of this show, her weekly podcast, is called This Kid's Storybook Bible is...
Satanic.
Demonic, yes.
Oh,
you were
I was
close.
in the
There you
neighborhood.
go. So I'm going to play you a clip from what she said during her episode. There's 2 clips I'm going to play for you. Here's the first one.
We don't get to listen to a lot of ladies on this. I'm very excited to hear her.
I mean, listen, when I'm quoting conservative commentators, you're right. The options are limited. This is just one section of this very long podcast segment.
A
all right?
curiously powerful
here we go.
graphic novel. The problem is that it is actually explicit. It is extremely gory. It is not theologically accurate. And it seems that it is actually meant to shock and disturb. It was seemingly created for adults who almost want to make fun of the Bible and to show how maybe cruel and merciless God seems, rather than for children to show them the beauty of Scripture and the love of Christ.
So I'll stop there for a second. She's going through the book. She's like, you guys, I know this looks like it's a book for kids because it's Lego pictures, but it's actually,
And
it's created for adults.
Is she reading the book for children, or is she just reading a random Lego or brick Bible, whatever? Because I feel like that's a significant difference.
That is an absolutely great question, which we will answer in a second.
Oh, great.
Which we'll talk about in a second. But basically, someone informed her that this book exists. She's going through and she's like, oh, it's gory. It's explicit. She said it's not theologically accurate, but she never explained what she thought was not theologically accurate because I repeat,
Well,
it
it
is
doesn't matter.
theologically accurate. It does depict what the Bible says. And she says it looks like it's created for adults who want to make fun of the Bible and show how maybe cruel and merciless God is. Like, honey, you're telling on yourself.
Well, and
Because quoting the Bible as written, whatever version
Yeah.
of the Bible we're using here,
Yeah.
guess what? God's kind of a dick in the Bible. That's how it works. That's the story of
I
the
also
Bible.
love that she's kind of shining a light on the bait and switch they have to do with kids of like, no, when they're kids, we have to say how nice Jesus
Right,
is.
because if
And
you
it's
actually read the book,
Yeah.
you would realize,
It's-
God likes genocide.
it's only as an adult that we're allowed to find out that, you know, if children make fun of another child, they are at risk of being mauled by a bear.
Right. You got to
Is that the only Bible story I know?
That is the only Bible story
Possibly.
you know. Yes. Like if anything about the Brick Bible shocks and disturbs you, as she said, then your problem's with the Bible, not
Yeah.
the artist recreating the scenes.
I love this Johnny-come-lately aspect of it, too.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's not a new book. So, like, why are you talking about this today as if, you guys, this just came out?
It's
Like,
very Trumpian of like, everybody's talking about the cavalry all of a sudden. Like, no, we're not. You just learned about it, bud.
yeah. Did you know there are 2 Dakotas? What? So throughout the show, not surprisingly, Allie Beth Stuckey misgenders Sperling.
Obviously.
She knows that Sperling is trans, even though the name on the book is the dead name. But she repeatedly does not acknowledge trans identities. She only refers to Sperling as quote-unquote transgender.
She says the words quote unquote.
She does.
What a cunt.
Yeah. And when reading a biography of Sperling, like the sort that you would find on the book's description page, she notes that Sperling used to attend an Episcopal church, which is
But-
true. And then Allie Beth Stuckey is like, the Episcopal denomination is extremely liberal.
I was just about to say, I bet it's the wrong kind of
It's
Christian.
the wrong kind of Christian. And then she insists Sperling must have some kind of, quote, humiliation fetish. as a way of, I think, explaining her trans identity.
Ma'am, you simply cannot say fetish. Like, it's just not becoming.
So why is she talking about this book today and not like 20 years ago when it came out?
Because it was on sale at her Barnes & Noble, and she's like, what?
As if she would walk into a bookstore. Someone sent her a screenshot from what I can imagine, what I think is a private Facebook group where people share book reviews for Christian families.
Got you.
So someone in this Facebook group basically wrote that, I'm going to read you what the screenshot says in the private Facebook group. Do I have access to it? Maybe.
Huh?
Here's what it says. Someone posts a picture of the brick Bible, not the one for kids, the brick Bible. And it says, here's the whole comment. This is from Random Parent. Do not get this book for your children. My son won it in a VBS Sunday night, Vacation Bible School. In a VBS Sunday night. They had a Lego competition, as it was a Lego Vacation Bible School starting Monday. Donations were taken that were Lego themed. We left for a 2-day road trip Monday, and he read it.
Legoland?
He read it for 2 days. The Lego Bible, the brick Bible. He asked questions like, what's a eunuch? Not realizing there was images of characters cutting off their private parts and blood everywhere.
Private parts is
Wait, I'm not
so
done.
good.
We had a talk about rape, as he already read that in the Bible, but this story was in there as well as with a Lego raping another Lego. It jumped from one horrific story to another, never showing God's love and grace. Even God was shown from the beginning as a mean, hateful character. I am sick to my stomach as I am so careful with what he is exposed to. I looked up info on the author and some statements he/she made are included. The author is a trans atheist, and this was written to mock the Bible and for adult/teen audience.
I do like that they're mad that they did not vet their own shit and gave it to their kid.
It's the same people who do book banning, where it's like, this book, it's like, honey, this book is for adults.
Yeah.
And your kid, if they're reading it, fine. But like, also, you're taking this passage out of context.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. They never read the books they want to ban. But here she is like, we got a Bible for my son. He won it. And then he started reading it. And I was so proud of little Timmy. And the next thing I know, oh my God, they actually showed the Bible. And I can't handle that.
I don't know why. This feels like when like a 10-year-old accidentally gets his hand on a Stephen King novel. And it's like, oh no, you're not ready for this.
My son's reading a book. I'm so happy. Wait a minute. What book is this? Yeah.
The topiary's coming to life.
So
That's a Shining
here's
reference.
what I think happened. This kid goes to Vacation Bible School. It's not weird that it's Lego themed. They try to do weird themes for whatever. How do you get kids excited about summer school that's Bible themed? We're doing island themed Bible, whatever. So they did a Lego themed Bible school. Someone at the church must have been like, someone at the Vacation Bible School must have found or heard of the brick Bible. And they said, oh, it's a Bible made of Legos.
I'm going to do no vetting on this.
No, let's just pick up the book and we'll give it as a prize. This kid wins the prize. He's reading the book. Mother finds out about it. But here's the thing. Looking at the picture they posted, it was the regular brick Bible. It was not the kids edition, which shouldn't be a big deal. But like, okay, you didn't do your job in vetting the book.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's still the Bible. But none of that should matter because guess what? God is cruel and vindictive in the Bible. That is true from page 1. This mom was mad because her kid read the Bible, warts and all, instead of the sanitized ones that youth pastors
This
like.
is also like when like moms brought their 12-year-olds to Deadpool and were like, they swore.
It's a
and it's
superhero
like,
movie.
It's rated R, ma'am. And it's like, it's super, like that's not our responsibility for you to make assumptions and then blame us about it.
So this is the next clip I'm going to play for you from Allie Beth Stuckey because she's still going on about how horrible, how could this have happened? And clearly this is part of some atheist agenda. Okay, let's, here's the next clip.
Atheist agenda, 8 years old.
There's nothing that indicates that it would be blasphemous, of course, because it wants Christians and it especially wants unsuspecting kids to read it. And they want these violent images to be stuck in their head so that when they think about God and they think about Christianity, they are fearful and angry. But you don't get that at all when you are looking at the cover.
What does the cover look like?
It looks like Lego Bible characters. It's not a weird cover. But the idea that the hidden agenda of this book is to get children Christian parents' children to read it, and they want these violent images stuck in their head. It's just the Bible. The Bible is violent. If you want that to be banned or you don't want your kids to read it, the problem is with the Bible. She went on to say, it is so much like Satan to make a book like this that looks cheery and loving on the outside, that really on the inside is a poor depiction of what God is.
No, that's literally what the Bible is, because he killed the entire world and then sent a rainbow, and everyone's like, cool.
Rainbow.
No, I'm not mad anymore. We're going to repopulate the earth with just my family.
If kids read the Bible in any form and come away from it thinking God is malicious, whose fault is that?
I remember, this is obviously years ago, but when my niece, who's now in high school, was like a kid, she was playing with a little Noah's Ark set. And I was like, oh, do you know the story of Noah's Ark? And she said no. And I started telling the story, and I was like, how do I skip over the fact that the
God was
entire
pissed one day.
world drowned?
Yeah. God hated everybody.
It's just such a, like, one of those things that it's lovely to, like, oh, 2 by 2, 2 by 2. And then it's like, oh, no.
And that's the thing about the Brick Bible, which is that it doesn't hide from telling kids, God wanted to murder everybody except.
One of my favorite little bits that you see once in a while is when they show the 2 lions, and it's 2 male lions.
Oh, yeah. In
That's
the
always
children's book
extremely funny for me.
Yeah. So, like, Allie Beth Stuckey seems upset that kids were given the text of the Bible, or a version of the Bible, without the kinds of filters she wants. And yet, within seconds of her saying all that, she quickly changed course. And she was like, I mean, the Bible is absolutely gory in some parts, and, quote, it does talk about some really, really disturbing stuff. But she went on to say, that doesn't mean that stuff is good. Like, God's not, when God commits genocide, he's not saying genocide is good.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. Like anyway, the Brick Bible doesn't say that stuff is good either.
I know that they make a lot of judgments on whether or not genocide is good. It seems like a really, like, neutral thing that happens.
If you need to be told that genocide is bad, we got bigger issues.
Yeah, that's fair.
So since her broadcast, the criticisms of the Brick Bible series have been posted on right-wing media outlets with headlines like, this is from Blaze Media, which is the right-wing website that she works for, but they wrote an article hyping her video. Demonic, all caps, demonic storybook Bible sold to kids by a transgender atheist.
I mean, at least they said transgender and not some slur.
They could have added the ED at the end. They did not. Good for them.
They could have dropped off a lot of letters after trans.
Yep. Parents and another website. Parents and kids misled by deceptive storybook Bible. It's like,
wow, they really, really, really,
maybe
really
the responsibility
need to be the victims of something.
Should be on the parents and kids who are dumb enough to fall for reading the Bible. I mean, they act like there was an agenda to trick them, and there was not. You just didn't vet the book properly. It suggests a level of duplicity that just doesn't exist. So it turns out.
Well, they want it both ways, right? They want us to be like constantly going after them and, leaving traps here and there, but they're not going to do anything to protect themselves or vet what they're looking at. They're just going to be mad.
So it turns out I've known L.B. Sperling for many, many years.
Have you?
So when this story came out, I'm like...
Is she local? Can we be friends?
She's far, far away. And
doesn't want to be my friend personally.
I'm sure she wants to be your friend. So I asked her, I'm like, hey, do you have anything to say about this Allie Beth Stuckey thing?
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, right. I'm the crazy one who's addicted to the internet. You have a normal life where you create art. So I did speak with her earlier this week, though, and I showed her the video, and I'm like, specifically, I'd like to hear your thoughts on certain things.
What'd she say?
Well, first of all, she's like, wow, ripped from the headlines of 2011. Here's what she did tell me. She said, wow, this is kind of a throwback. I'm paraphrasing here. Kind of a throwback because she used to get hate mail, literal hate mail when the series came out. Eventually, with the internet and all, and when the books came out, she stopped getting hate mail and started getting 1-star Amazon reviews from people who realized
That's the next
all this
step.
Stuff. Yeah. This just looks like a continuation of that by someone who did not understand the goal of the project. I did ask her, did you know your books and website were popular in vacation Bible schools and churches? She said she had some awareness, but you can't really tell when people buy your book that it's church people buying it or like dirty, dirty heathens buying it.
Sure.
So she didn't know.
Well, our money explodes. So.
Yes, right. Didn't really understand. She didn't know how many books are bought by which camps. You know what I mean? Fair point. There was some frustration with the enormous amount of anti-trans rhetoric that Allie Beth Stuckey was using for obvious reasons. Yeah. Like throughout me talking to her, she kept saying, oh, yeah, who said this? Alfred Stuckey? Alfred? Was it Alfred?
Oh, funny.
I'm sorry. Is it offensive to misname someone? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also, there was some frustration that Stuckey kept treating the quote-unquote adult versions of the book, which are just the default versions of the book, as if they were meant for children.
Right.
They're not. They're meant for a general audience.
Yeah.
But if you go to the Brick Bible, Sperling told me she actually got her publisher to do this later on. If you go to Amazon to look at the Brick Bible, there is a disclaimer on the new, like I'm looking at the Brick Bible, the New Testament, and the disclaimer says, note to parents, this book is intended for older children, teens, and adults. For younger children, please search Amazon for the Brick Bible for Kids.
Like highlighted.
I highlighted it. But that disclaimer is right at the top of the page if you go looking for it now. Specifically so, anyone who's picking up this book thinking it's for kids will at least try to figure out what's going on here. Stuckey did not figure that out. But she did. Sperling, she took it all in stride. She's been here before. She told me, like, there's no secret agenda.
Gotta have thick skin, I'm sure.
There's no deception. And she wanted to let me know I do not have a humiliation fetish.
Thank you.
I did
Thank
ask
you for
her,
that clarification.
Yeah, I did ask her, are you working on anything else now? Because the last Brick Bible book came out in 2018, like I said. The Brick Book of Mormon is still ongoing.
Oh, thank God.
And you can actually see what she's got at thebrickbookofmormon.com. And you can get through some of the books. It's not a complete project yet.
Oh, my God.
But she started doing that.
I am Moroni.
She just released a book that has nothing to do with Legos. That is online, I believe, only. But it's called Salvation from Ancient Judaism to Christianity Without a Historical Jesus. Like, she actually studied this stuff.
It's not a photography book.
Nope,
it's just
all
a book.
writing
Oh, interesting.
From someone who actually knows what she's talking about.
Ooh, I would love to get my hands on that.
Those links will be in the show notes as well. But it was lovely talking to her and being the one to let her know.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was fun. I felt proud of myself.
It's so, I know I keep doing it reminds me of, but I just got a flashback to when I used to work at a restaurant in the city. And we had like a buffet that you can hit up for free if you order a drink or something like that. And the number of times that people would not read the sign and then get their food and I charge them $12 or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like,
I'm at this comedy club and you need me to get 2 drinks?
Right, exactly.
What?
But it would always be like, well, there's a sign there. Well, I didn't see that. And it's like, okay, your anger is displaced because I do not believe you not seeing a sign. It's my personal fault. But it's the same thing of like, I'm just going to wander through the world with blinders on. And then if anything doesn't go perfectly, I'm going to be mad at the rest of the world for not like having bumpers on the lanes. Sorry to mix metaphors.
Yeah, you're the reason we have to put disclaimers on dumb kids' toys.
Truly. Of like, oh, I shouldn't eat the plastic?
Right.
Oh.
Let's get to a different story that involves Louisiana. It's been a while since we talked about them.
Great.
Let me remind you why we're talking about this particular story. Back in June, the governor of Louisiana, Republican Jeff Landry, he signed a law that says, and said, I can't wait to be sued. He signed a law to put the 10 Commandments, a specific version of the 10 Commandments, in every public school classroom across the state.
That was in Louisiana?
That was in Louisiana.
That was Oklahoma that was doing that.
No, Oklahoma does other dumb shit.
Got you.
This is Louisiana.
Is this one where they got around it with the dollar bills? What state was that?
Different state as well.
God damn it.
Sorry, you're mixing up your crazy ass red states.
And I pay attention to this stuff.
Do you, though?
Well, that's actually a really fair criticism that I was hoping you wouldn't say out loud.
After he signed the law, a coalition of religious and non-religious plaintiffs, backed by a bunch of church-state separation groups, they immediately filed a lawsuit. And we've talked about the lawsuit in the past. They're saying, like, come on. Come on. Just the whole lawsuit is just First Amendment. Here are some highlights in the First Amendment.
And then guys.
Yeah, that's it. With a look image.
Like the eye look.
Yeah,
looking,
eye
guys.
emoji, and that's
Guys.
it. That's the whole lawsuit. And right now, it's literally in a federal court. It happens to be that the judge that was randomly assigned to this case is an Obama-appointed judge.
Oh, thank Christ.
Which is, yes, that's good news. But right now, here's what happened. The law said this goes into effect, I believe, in like June, because that's when
2024?
Yes, when the school year starts. But then the law changed, so now it's not official until January.
Okay.
But the judge said, listen, I don't care if January is when you're going to start enforcing the law. Even if, for now, until like November, no school is going to put up anything until I have time to go through this lawsuit. So right now, nothing's happening until the judge makes a ruling of some case. So it's in the courtroom.
And was this kind of expected?
Totally expected.
Okay.
I think Louisiana passed this law specifically because they figured we are going to get sued over this. That's why Landry said, can't wait to get sued. They know they're going to get sued. They know they're going to lose.
Yeah.
And even if they don't, the other side's going to appeal. But they know, all right, we're just going to keep fighting this out in courts until we get to our buddies on the Supreme Court, and then we'll win.
Yeah.
That's the long-term game plan here. Anyway, the judge has the case right now. This week, however, the reason I bring this all up is that Jeff Landry and Louisiana's Attorney General, another Republican, Liz Murrill, they held a press conference basically telling everyone, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. Why are y'all upset about the lawsuit?
When I said I can't wait to be sued, what I meant was...
Yeah, basically, they held the press conference this week to formally ask the judge to toss out the lawsuit. They just filed a filing this week. They filed with the judge and said, "Listen, I know they sued over this. We are now asking you, instead of responding to their arguments, really, we're saying just toss it. There's no merits to what they're saying, so just say there's nothing for me to rule on. I'm not gonna
just let me do this thing that I want to do, please."
Yeah,
he's just saying, just tell them no.
Just tell them no. Just say no. And what their argument is, they're saying, first of all, the law doesn't go into effect until January 1st, and none of the posters have gone up in the classrooms yet, so what the hell is everyone so angry about? That's kind of the gist of their argument.
Feels kind of intellectually dishonest.
Let me play for you. I believe this is the right clip. We'll find out. And by the way, I should tell you, the audio on this is a little weird, so you're only going to hear it out of one side of your ear, but this is the audio. But I'll play this for you, then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So as we explain in the brief, the lawsuit is premature, and the plaintiffs cannot prove that they have any actual injury. That's because they don't allege to have seen any displays yet, and they certainly can't allege that they have seen any display of the Ten Commandments that violates their constitutional rights. No defendant has actually posted the Ten Commandments on a classroom wall. Because this lawsuit is all based on hypothetical facts, the court can't decide the case yet. So we've asked the court to dismiss the case on that basis in our brief.
So that's her argument. None of you who are filing this lawsuit have seen a Ten Commandments. You're not really offended by this because you can't point to the poster that's offending you. So you have no standing. You have no legal standing. So, hey, judge, you don't have to even rule on the merits. Just toss it. There's no case here.
That's funny because I have a law that I wrote to put just a corpse in every church. Just a corpse there.
Yep.
Nobody's seen the corpse, so I'm not sure what they're so upset about, but it's just going to be a corpse in every single church. But what are you guys mad about? It hasn't happened yet.
My understanding, again, we're not legal scholars. You can go to other podcasts for that. But again, they're not saying we saw a poster and it offended us. They're saying we read the law that you passed and we see what it says. And that violates Louisiana's law. It violates federal law. And so that's what we're suing over. They're not saying we saw this poster and it's bad. They're saying the law says you're going to do this. Well, that alone is illegal. You don't need to wait for the poster to go up for us to say it's illegal. It's illegal now because the law it's a law. It's passed already. It's in the books. So I don't think they have any case here. But it was amusing to watch these people try to justify everything we did is legal. And I'm going to tell you more about this in a second.
I'm just imagining the judge just like kind of looking around the room like, you guys hearing this?
I mean, they filed their motion to have the entire case dismissed. And that's
Have we
it.
heard back yet?
Haven't heard back yet. Judge will make his ruling whenever. But again, the First Amendment. Let me get back to that. I'm going to play you one more clip. This is from Jeff Landry, the governor, who also spoke up at this thing. And again, I know the audio is only going to come from one side. That's just the audio I have.
Well, it's coming from the left, just like he is.
I did not know that the Ten Commandments was such a bad way for someone to live their life. And I believe that the legislature was only following the will of the people of the state. Because when you look at the sheer votes that were cast in support of this bill, it was done in a bipartisan support.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second.
I love his accent. I
very-
infrequently get to hear a true like New Orleans accent, and I really like it.
Yes,
I
everything
love
else about the
local
guy,
regional
no.
accents. Yeah, no, truly.
Yes. So he says, I didn't know the Ten Commandments
accent.
was such a bad way for someone to live their life. We're not talking about First of all, we can have a discussion about the Ten Commandments being a bad way to live your life. We're not even getting into the specifics of the commandments and whether certain ones are good, certain ones are bad, whatever. But then he says the legislature was just doing what the people wanted, because if you look at the votes,
overwhelming votes.
it was bipartisan, which is true. Guess what? Louisiana has some conservative Democrats. You are never going to believe it, but they do.
Can't believe it.
Every no vote for this law came from Democrats, every one of them. But yeah, a couple of Democrats voted for it because they're not great Democrats, but whatever. It doesn't matter if it passed with 100% of the votes, though, because the First Amendment is not subject to popular vote. That's why it's a right.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if 100% of legislators supported the bill. It would still be illegal. And the reason it's illegal is because posting a Christian display in a public school classroom doesn't matter what it looks like. Doesn't matter how much Republicans try to pretend this is about American history.
Oh my God.
It's still a
So
violation of the First Amendment. You can't window dress your way out of this. And then I want to play one last clip for you here, which is that some reporter asked Jeff Landry, hey, what would you say, the governor, what would you say to like atheist parents and students who are upset by seeing this stuff on the wall? And you want to take a guess at how he answered that one?
You can leave.
Oh, you're
Love it or leave it?
You're very close.
Okay, let's
see.
hear it.
Also from one side of your ear as well.
May I ask either of you, for the children who may not believe in God and see this in their classroom, or parents who are upset that they may be in their child's classroom, what should they do?
Well, here's what I would say. I think we've forgotten in this country that democracy actually means majority rules.
Well,
For some kind of way over the last 2 decades or so, for whatever reason, our government has flipped the script, or the people believe that we flipped the script. When you elect people, you elect them by a majority. That majority gets to rule. That does not mean that if you don't like something, you have a right to impose that which the majority likes. And so what I would say to those parents is that if those posters are in school and they find them so vulgar, just tell the child not to look at it.
So 2 things there. We've forgotten in this country that democracy actually means majority rules, which is true in an election.
Well,
but you can't pass a law that is illegal. It's why we have a whole court system.
it just
like-
belies such a...
He thinks if you win a
Even
majority in
misunderst-
legislature, you can do whatever you want and no one can stop you.
Yeah.
Which in Louisiana, I'm pretty sure, like any state in the South, really,
Yeah.
it's not really something you want to get behind. And then he says at the very end, you nailed the prediction. If these parents or these kids see the posters in schools and they find them so vulgar, just don't look at it.
Don't look at it is one of the funniest things I've heard in a hot minute. It's
Stop paying attention in school. What's the big deal?
These people, these fucking people, like, I just cannot put myself in the position where I am leading an entire state, and I haven't done my normal research, but I'm remembering that Louisiana is the bottom 5 of education.
I'm sure you are right.
I feel like I looked that up last time we did this, and just, I can't imagine looking around and being like, Yeah, I'm going to use all, like, speaking of like your your political capital, I'm going to spend all of my political capital on putting like cheapy posters in classrooms.
I'm sure the kids who can't get free breakfast and lunch are going to love the 10 Commandments.
I don't know,
So
man. It's just sad.
This response from Landry, it's the type of response you only ever hear from Christians who expect their religion to be treated as the default. And everyone else can just ignore the Christian propaganda.
I mean, truly, going back to telling Jefferson lies, or I can never remember what the actual name of the podcast is.
Telling Jefferson lies.
Telling Jefferson lies. There's a clip of two men who are talking about like how they want Christian majority rule, and somebody's like, "What about non-Christians?" And they're like, "Yeah, they'll be treated the way that like non-Muslims are treated in the Middle East." So, no. And literally they're like, well, it's not going to be us. Like, we're not going to be the bad guys. So, like, it's so selfish. It's so self-involved, which is the opposite of what Christ was all about. It's like, how can you do this to children? Like, how can you?
Oh, they don't care.
They don't care.
That's why.
And it's just, like, I'm empathetic to a fault that it's crippling in my life often. But it just puts me in this position of not being able to wrap my head around why somebody who has gained this much power would do something so fucking pointless with it. Like, truly, like,
So-
how hard do you think it is to get elected to governor? Millions and millions of dollars and races and
this is what you do.
and this is what you're doing with your power? Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
Well, it gets better.
Oh, great. I was worried it would get worse.
So after they say all this stupid stuff, the Attorney General, Merle, whose office filed this motion, hey, judge, toss out the case, she basically decides, listen, if these people claim they're so offended by these posters, which, by the way, aren't even in school yet, the judge should toss the case. But the whole idea that the 10 Commandments is proselytizing, this idea that we're trying to indoctrinate kids with Christianity, that's ridiculous.
So
in
ridiculous.
fact, let me show you some sample posters that my office made that basically shows you, like, listen, if this was in your kid's classroom, would you really be offended by this? So she offered up actual posters that might go
Do you
up in
have
a
those
classroom.
pulled up on your computer?
Hell
Oh,
yes. But before you look, here's one example. This is not the weird one, but here's one that says you have a picture of a 10 Commandments monument on one side, and it says, how does the Supreme Court view the 10 Commandments? And then you have 3 word bubbles that basically quote Supreme Court decisions. And the thing is, I don't think Merle expected anyone to read closely any of these posters, so I did. Yeah. And here's the couple things. 2 of these word bubbles come from a decision, Van Orden v. Perry, and they quote the dissent, saying these people didn't want the 10 Commandments up on public property. But guess what the dissent says? According to the poster she put up, here's one example from Van Orden v. Perry. This court has subscribed to the view that the 10 Commandments influence the development of Western legal thought. Which sounds like, wow, that's in the dissent.
Yeah.
Wow. So if you actually go back to the dissenting opinion.
I did see a couple glaring ellipses, which make me feel like
ellipses are never a good sign. But here's what John Paul Stevens at the time actually said. Though this court has subscribed to the view that the 10 Commandments influence the development of Western legal thought, it has not officially endorsed the far more specific claim that the 10 Commandments played a significant role in the development of our nation's foundational documents.
That's really well put, actually.
And by the way, what Stevens was saying is, listen, I know the majority says this, but they're wrong for the following reason.
Yeah.
He's not saying, well, I guess this is the way it is. He's just saying, yeah, this is what my colleagues are arguing, but they're wrong.
But they're dum-dums.
Yeah.
I've always said that about them.
And the other dissent on the poster actually comes from Justice David Souter, who specifically said the 10 Commandments would be okay to display in public spaces so long as there is a context, and that context is historical. But what do they quote him saying? They quote him saying,
We like ... the 10 Commandments.
Yeah. Here's what they quote Souter as saying. A display of the commandments accompanied by an exposition of how they have influenced modern law would most likely be constitutionally unobjectionable, and the Decalogue could, ... be integrated constitutionally into a course of study in public schools.
Which is not the same thing as hanging them on a wall.
Which is not the same thing as hanging them on the wall. You could say, like, yeah, 10 Commandments, here they are in an objective
What's in that
way.
ellipses? Anything good?
I don't know what's in the ellipses, but again, what he's saying...
could
what
be in
he's saying
schools is so suspicious.
It is okay to talk about the commandments in school or to show kids the 10 Commandments if there's a historical context for it, or if you're doing it for like literary reasons. Of course you could do it. No one was ever stopping you. But like putting a 10 Commandments plaque in front of a public school, that's a very different story.
And listen, as a devoted plaque reader, if I see a plaque, I'm going to read it. I will tell you, the rest of the world ain't plaque readers. They are not going to like they're not even going to go to a museum and read the little placard next to the painting.
Yeah.
They're not going to read like your little paragraph about how the 10 Commandments technically were part of the foundation.
I'm going to ask you to look at the next poster in a second. But before I do, one of the things in the law, they changed this law before it was passed because they knew it was going to be illegal. One of the things they said is these posters need to have a disclaimer on them or next to them or whatever. Every one of these sample posters that Merle put up, they had the disclaimer on them. You didn't notice it in the last picture.
Did not.
You did not. I'm going to show you the second picture.
Okay.
I want you to find where the disclaimer is and tell people where the disclaimer is. Here is the poster.
Oh, God. Since the beginning of the world.
No. That's the actual poster. The disclaimer is way the fuck down here in size like 2 font. It doesn't matter what it says. It's very long. But come back here for a second, and this second poster I want to show you, they actually quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they have a picture of RBG, and they quote her saying, "Since the beginning of time, the world has known 4 great documents. Great because all the benefits to humanity which came about as a result of their fine ideals and principles." Wow. And those 4 documents include the 1689 English Bill of Rights, the 10 Commandments, the Declaration of Independence, and the Magna Carta. Okay, wow. Interesting quotation from RBG saying the 10 Commandments is one of these like foundational documents.
She didn't say those words. She said there are 4 of them.
Well, there are 4 great documents that the world has known, these 4 great documents. Where did she say this? Because they did not cite where she said this from.
I haven't the slightest.
In the press conference, Merle, and actually in the lawsuit, if I can find the actual wording here, let me see if I can make sure I get this right. I will not be able to, sorry. But what she said is it's in Ruth Bader Ginsburg's book, a book she put out a couple years before she died. Not in a Supreme Court ruling, but in a book she wrote. So I looked at the book she wrote.
Yeah.
And guess what it says in the book she wrote? Because that doesn't sound like anything she would have said.
No, it really doesn't.
In her book, it's called My Own Words. It was published just a couple years before she died. Well, guess what? She reprinted an essay that she wrote in 8th grade.
No.
This is from the 8th grade essay she wrote at her public school in Brooklyn, New York.
What year? The 50s?
1946.
Fuck me. That
editorial
is...
by Ruth Bader. Since the beginning of time, the world has known 4 great documents. Great because all the benefits to humanity which came about as a result of their fine ideals and principles.
So she was talking about the 10 Commandments,
The
but
first but she was like
13-ish.
Yes. The first was the 10 Commandments, which was given to Moses while he was leading the Israelites through the wilderness to the land of Canaan. Today, people of almost every religion respect and accept them as a code of ethics and a standard of behavior. Which, listen, first of all, very articulate for a 13-year-old.
13-year-old.
But also not anything she wrote as a justice because she figured it out by then.
Also, oh my God, can you imagine being so dishonest that you're going to dig it? Do you know when I was going through my shit, I found a certificate for a thing I wrote about being a minority American that I won an award for? I hope nobody pulls that and is like, well, I know Jessica says that white men are terrible, but look at all the stupid shit she said about herself. Kids are stupid. That's their entire job.
Yeah. By the way, I did find it in the lawsuit. Here's what, when that poster is printed in the lawsuit, here's what Murrell's office writes.
13-year-old Ruth Bader Ginsburg was smarter than any of these guys are now.
That is true. Here's what she writes. Here's all she writes.
Let's hear it.
For history classrooms, she's saying these are posters you could use in classrooms that are clearly not offensive. For history classrooms, a school, teacher, or civic nonprofit looking to donate displays might consider looking to the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who wrote, in my own words, and then the image. No mention of the fact that she was 13 when she wrote it.
Mm-hmm. Like, doesn't that just tell you everything you need to know about these people? It's like, I really think it's not even about religion or anything. It's like they decided they want something and somebody told them no, and they are throwing a like long ass tantrum about it that's going to go up to the Supreme Court.
Yep. Oh, wait, she has other sample posters.
Oh, good.
Are you ready for this one?
Can I come over?
I just want to get your reaction on my microphone when you see the following poster.
Okay.
That, by the way, she says, along the same lines,
Yep.
if you want to donate posters,
Yep.
you might turn to the following in your fine arts classrooms. Come look, show us how they're publishing the commandments. Jessica has left the room. She's on the floor in the fetal position.
Oh my fucking God.
Mm-hmm.
You are kidding. Why?
Go back to your mic and tell us what you're looking at. By the way, the disclaimer is also in 2-point font at the bottom of this one.
Holy fucking Christ. Okay.
Fine Arts Classroom.
Fine Arts Classroom. It's a depiction of Moses and the Ten Commandments.
Charleston Heston as Moses.
Oh, is it
in
really?
The movie.
Oh, I thought it was an illustration.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh my God, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda dressed up as Hamilton, and they're lining up the 10 dual commandments with the 10 commandments, which it's really important for me, a white girl from the suburbs, to point out that that song is not based on the 10 commandments. I think it's Biggie Smalls, and it's the 10, fuck, what is it? It's something.
But you're right. The 10 dual commandments, the song from Hamilton, has nothing to do with the biblical 10 commandments, except that there are 10 of them, and they are called the 10 dual commandments.
The 10 crack commandments.
Yes.
And it is Biggie Smalls. Good for me.
There you go.
I was like shaking that I got that super
That is
wrong.
the whitest thing you've ever done.
Listen, the 10 crack commandments is not the whitest thing I've ever said.
So that is a poster. She says, you can hang this up. See? It shows the 10
never get high in your own
commandments.
supply in the 10 commandments, because it's defo in the 10 crack commandments. Never get high on your own supply.
Using Lin-Manuel Miranda to justify
It's
her
so
unconstitutional law.
Deeply. Oh my God, do you think Lynn has seen this?
I don't know.
Oh my God, what would he
This is
do?
the equivalent of saying, David Letterman had top 10 lists back in the day, so that supports the 10 Commandments. Oh, here's another one.
I can't believe it.
Here's another one I can...
There's more?
Oh, there's so many more. Hang on. You can use this one if you are teaching civil rights, for example. Come look.
I'm like Alice in Wonderland over here, just switching seats.
Yep, that's okay. Here's one for the civil rights people.
Oh, no.
Uh-huh. And this one...
Is that based on anything? Did MLK say that?
MLK is the one depicted in this one. You have a illustration of Moses and the 10 Commandments, and you also have Martin Luther King Jr. with his 10 Commandments for nonviolence. And this is true. He required campaign volunteers when he was doing passive resistance, nonviolent activism. He did pass out this thing, like, I want you to sign this list of things you are promising to adhere to. And some of them were super religious. Like, for example, his, quote, 10 commandments for nonviolence are things like meditate daily on the teachings and life of Jesus. Remember always that the nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory. There are a bunch of things. Some of them are explicitly religious because, guess what? He was a reverend. But also... First, that has nothing to do with the 10 Commandments in the Bible unless you want to count there are 10 things. But also, I would argue, this is explicitly religious, and putting an explicitly religious list of things on the poster
Truly.
doesn't actually make it more secular, which is
And,
kind of weird.
I mean, ironically,
If you want to study it in an objective way, fine. But like,
I mean, definitely those are probably better morals to abide by than the real Ten Commandments.
right.
I mean, I feel like
the
I
other
could meditate
MLK
on.
commandments include refrain from the violence of fist, tongue, or heart.
Oh,
Seek to perform regular
I'm
service for
tapped
others.
out with the tongue part.
Sacrifice personal wishes in order that all men might be free. Like, there are some nice, thoughtful things on that list.
It's just so.
And then my favorite one that she had in the press conference was this one that depicts the House of Representatives and lawgivers, famous lawgivers, such as,
What the fuck is that?
oh, you know who that is.
Oh, Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, next to Moses. Moses, Mike Johnson. You see, they're both lawgivers, and Mike Johnson's from Louisiana, so they love him.
Oh, I see. I can't explain why I find it really funny that every Moses they use is slightly different. Like with the Charlton Heston Moses, this is a marble statue of Moses.
And first of all, Mike Johnson has now presided over arguably one of the least productive sessions of Congress ever. Couldn't even get basic shit done with the Republican majority.
Nobody likes him.
But if your argument is, well, we got to put the Ten Commandments up because it was handed down by Moses. Moses is the one that revealed it, so let's show other famous lawmakers. You could just as easily
Was
have
Moses a lawmaker? Was that his whole thing? I thought he was like
Yes.
just did the Red Sea. Wasn't he the one who lived around for 20 years in the desert?
Yeah, he got lost real easily.
I don't know. Maybe he was the leader that we need.
You could also put up a picture of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it would serve the exact same purpose. And no
Yeah.
one's suggesting this is what kids should live up to. But that wasn't nearly as messed up as when they said, well, what could you do in a...
Get lost for 20 years in a desert. Just go in a straight line. Eventually you'll
Dude,
find water.
No GPS, led by men, very
yeah,
confident
the
in
sun
the
was
direction
doing
they're
the
going.
east-west thing.
Yeah, they're not really good with the science back in
I
the day.
guess. It just seems like 20 years is... Like, after 2 years, somebody's going to step up and be like, hey, gang.
I got two more to show you, and
Really?
there's not much she did not put these in the press conference, but they are in the lawsuit.
Oh, good.
She has the image pasted in
Is
the
it
lawsuit.
another Moses?
Nope.
Okay.
This one just says a school teacher or civic nonprofit looking to donate displays might choose a humor-inspired poster.
Never get
for-
high on your own supply.
A humor-inspired poster for computer classes.
No. Tablet humor.
Tablet humor. And they have two iPads talking to each other saying, "What's that? That was the original tablet." And then the Ten Commandments. And then, wait, there's a worse one. Before I show it to you, I'm going to let you read the lawsuit. For anyone who's studying speech-language pathology,
Okay.
they might use this opportunity to reinforce strategies for overcoming stuttering in their speech classes. And here's the whole poster. Even important men stutter. Then they have a picture of the Ten Commandments, followed by a list of stuttering strategies, followed by a box that has a picture of King George VI of Britain, who struggled with the speech impediment.
Yeah, we all saw the movie. I didn't see it.
What do those three things have to do with each other? Well, I guess it was said that Moses had a stutter.
By whom?
I don't know, whoever wrote chapter
No, if he had
17.
a stutter, people would assume he's possessed by the devil and murder him. I don't believe he had a stutter. Yikes on many, many, many bikes.
So many.
So many bikes.
This is their way of saying, I want to go back to why are they showing all these
What
horrible
does this have to
pictures?
do
They're
with
saying, listen,
the Ten
if
Commandments?
these were the posters you saw in the classroom, no one would be offended by these. And yet, these people are suing us, saying they're offended by the Ten Commandments in schools. Well, let me show you why they shouldn't be offended. And by the way, they haven't even seen any of these posters yet, so they can't sue us.
I truly thought it was going to be like a Ten Commandments as a tongue twister. That's what I was like emotionally prepared for.
For the stuttering one?
Yeah, to be like, I'm not good at tongue twisters. I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
Wow. What does stuttering have to do with the Ten Commandments again?
Moses was apparently
Moses
a
might have been a
stutterer.
stutter. Who else do they have? Do they
King
have?
George VI. And that's it. And then just a list of stuttering strategies.
There is a basketball player who stuttered who came to talk to my junior high. I think his name is Mike Love.
I think you are right.
Yeah?
I also, because we both come from Chicago and he
Yeah.
was a Bulls player, I also remember going to the library to listen to a lecture by him.
Is that his name? Did I get it right? I know his last name is Love because I thought it was fucking
Love.
dope
And
as hell.
Yeah, something like that.
No, that was my junior high. We were in the gym for that one.
He made the rounds.
Yeah.
Good guy.
He was a really good guy. And I remember once in a while he still would
I
like
hope.
struggle with it. Oh my God, I didn't think of that.
Haven't
but he
thought
would
about it in
still
20
kind of
years.
like, he still clearly once in a while would like get caught up in the stutter.
Yeah.
And it was very, very, very cool too.
Interesting that they didn't list Joe Biden on that poster, who's probably
Who's
the
a
most famous
stutterer.
stutterer. Anyway.
I forgot about that.
Listen, if they're using an 8th grader's essay as
Are there no lady
justification,
stutterers?
like, first of all, this means when the 10 Commandments law goes into effect, there's no reason you can't put up some with pentagrams in the background, written in Arabic with like something else on. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That said, the judge should just declare the whole law unconstitutional and put this whole charade to rest.
James Earl Jones was a stutterer. Emily Blunt.
All right.
Lewis Carroll. Elvis Presley.
Lewis Carroll has a lot of issues.
Lewis Carroll I wrote an essay on him in college I'm not done talking about my Lewis
I
Carroll
forgot
essay.
one of the posters to show you.
Oh, good. Let me hear. Who cares?
This one, wait. This one is, it just says, if you want to donate a poster, you could highlight the impact of litigation on our governance, talk about how the impact of this lawsuit while alluding to pop culture by invoking internet memes. Come look at the poster. Her office
It's Minions.
created.
It's Minions. I'm putting my entire life that it's Minions.
It is not Minions.
No!
With a bunch of screenshots of headlines about how they're getting sued over the 10 Commandments, what do they have in the middle?
It's Regina George saying, "Why are you obsessed with me?" I'm so embarrassed for every person who is, I cannot believe this is happening to me. I
don't care if you don't like reading lawsuits or filings in legal cases. I'm telling you, you should read this one because all the images are in the lawsuit and they just seem to get progressively worse. And you know her office spent a lot of time designing these sample posters.
It's truly like an inch by inch little thumbnail. Like they couldn't figure out how to get a high-res image
Correct.
and make it bigger.
Those first ones I showed you had
Yeah.
high-res images on her website, but like the Regina George one,
Not high-res. Absolutely
Just got to
not.
zoom in on that one.
Boy.
Glorious.
And again, I just need to be clear. Why is that helpful for children?
Because they hate them, and this will make them hate school, and that will maybe force them to go to a, private religious school where it's just baked into the system, and they will ultimately attain their goal of destroying public schools.
May I say about Lewis Carroll? My teacher ended up using it as a model for autobiographical essays. And he was so obsessed with this little girl named Alice in real life. Alice was a real little girl that he knew. Every time I read so much weird shit he said, but every time he would spend a day with her, he would write in his journal, we must mark today, most especially with a white stone. He would always say white stone days. And my friend Amanda and I, if we had a good day, it is a white stone day today, because he hung out with a little girl named Alice he was in love with. He was such a creep. Lewis Carroll's an interesting figure of
fitting way to end that one.
I just needed to talk about myself for a little bit.
There
I was
you go.
uncomfortable.
Let's talk about a different story. One of the things I get a lot of emails about, they're like, hey, this pastor just got arrested. Why don't you talk about him on the show? Why don't you write about him? And my answer is always the same, which is, I get 1 million of these a day. I can't do all of them.
Yeah.
So unless there's something really interesting about it, I'm not covering every pastor behaving badly. Yeah. I can't. There's too many.
Just quick sidebar. I texted you yesterday, I think, because I was listening to a podcast, Hey Riddle Riddle, and the guest was saying that they grew up going to a mega church and their pastor got kicked out because he tried to take a hit out on a journalist from Christianity Today. And I texted him, he's like, that doesn't sound familiar. I can't find it anywhere. I need more details. This person's name was Vic. I need to find out more.
Why would a pastor be taking a hit out on a journalist?
Because they were probably going to
Interesting.
Put out the price of his sneakers or whatever.
So let me go to this particular guy. I did get a story this week where I'm like, all right, he's behaving badly. And then I looked into it. I'm like, oh, this is delicious. Okay. I'm going to share with you a sermon excerpt that I found from 2022. This is a guy named Dr. Taryn L. Dames. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. He is the senior pastor of North Dallas Community Bible Fellowship in Plano, Texas. And basically, he gave a sermon condemning Christians who accepted the existence of trans people.
Oh, boy.
So that's not great, but also that's not unusual coming from a Christian pastor. But this is a semi-long clip, but I want you to hear what this guy talks about and why it's wrong, he says,
Before
to
we
accept
do it,
trans people. Yeah.
Is his PhD real or honorary?
I wondered about that,
Yeah.
and then I realized, you know what?
I don't
Doesn't
care.
matter, and I don't care, so I didn't bother looking. All right, here's the clip from his sermon.
right, let's hit it.
Man's physical, God-given biology can change at any given moment. He think it can, and he can make it by his thoughts change. Or go to a doctor and have him manipulate his flesh. And so can a woman too. We so-called Christians who stand up and condone this evil immorality, we're cursing God to his face and saying, your image is disgusting. I will twist it how I want it to be. That is what a government is saying. That is what a government is promoting. And when Christians stand up and they feel political versus the outcry of the wrath of God, something is wrong with that Christian. We're living in a place that's bringing down the same thing that happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. We have legalized it.
Then
And
later
they
on.
spit in God's face and they scoff at him. What image? I can turn your man into a female at any time. That's demonic. And the church just accepted. Well, Pastor James is not loving for you to say that. Tell that to Jesus.
Then later on.
Why aren't we upset about sin anymore? Why do we just accept it? The perversion. Pastors and preachers right now ordaining homosexuals.
Ordaining.
Woe to those. The government saying children can have sex transformational surgery. The government is saying this. Use pronouns to call a boy so to mess up his mind, and we wonder where the men are. They're being told they're women.
All right. So typical bigoted, transphobic sermon given by a pastor a couple years ago. This guy cares so deeply about sin. Why aren't we upset about sin anymore? We're imitating Sodom and Gomorrah, and we're scoffing at God and spitting in God's face like nothing worse than a Christian who condones sin. And by the way, his church has been beating this drum for a while now, too. If you go to like their Facebook page, they have told parents that not disciplining their children on matters of biblical truth when it comes to gender, sex, and marriage, it means allowing godless moral standards to seep in. Can't let that happen. All right. So why are we talking about this guy?
Well, you were talking and he was talking. I was skimming through the story of Sodom and Gomorrah because that was the thing that stood out to me personally was that he cited Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm reading through a few things, and over they say the nature of the wickedness was never clear. Some people said homosexuality. Some people said violence against women. So, I don't know. I feel like maybe he's extrapolating something stupid so he can have his terrible opinion.
Yep. So here's the article from this week.
Ooh.
Apparently, according to an arrest warrant affidavit, an undercover Plano officer posed as a prostitute and placed an ad on a website that is commonly used by individuals to solicit sex for money. Back in May, this guy, Dames, called the number on the ad and offered to pay $150 for the, quote, full service, which is a slang meaning for sex, the affidavit alleges. And then the church kicked him out in May because of moral failure.
Oh.
There's a couple things about this.
Okay.
Very valid conversation and very different conversation to be had about the policing of consensual sex work.
Right.
It's important to note this guy thought he was meeting another adult, not someone pretending to be underage. So we can have that discussion. That's a separate discussion. But the hypocrisy of this guy who's like, Christians don't care about sin. And then this is what he's secretly doing. Not just a moral sin, according to his religion, but an actual criminal act. Like, he's not just not practicing what he preaches, he's doing the exact opposite because he figured no one would find out. And all this from a guy who was like, you know what we should do with trans people? Just throw them under the bus. This story is not unique to this dude. Like, there are other pastors who have done similar things. And I remember one guy back in the day, he said, officer, I was just trying to meet this woman to save her. And there was like a whole TV show about it, too.
You're kidding.
Very exploitative, very anti-sex work.
I think it's so funny that when
I'm not bothered, I want to make clear. I don't really give a shit about what this guy was doing in his private life. Like, whatever. That's between him and his family or whatever. It's the hypocrisy of this.
It truly is. And I always think it's really, really interesting that people talk about sex work and make jokes like that it's the world's oldest profession and all this stuff. And like, I don't know. They are so comfortable pulling from biblical times, quote unquote, to talk about their morality. But like, there's no acknowledgement that through time in memoriam, people have wanted to pay for sex because sometimes they want to have sex and can't get a consensual partner to do it for free. Like, just this idea that it's always been around, but it's always been bad, even though it's like the one fucking thing that every civilization has kicked off immediately. Like, and it is a place that, because it devalues women, I don't know. I just don't understand how, like, it's just this sort of moral policing that we decided that paying for sex work is wrong, but paying for somebody to make your food is fine, or somebody to do your hair and makeup is fine, but sex isn't okay. Like, these sort of, a massage is fine. These just sort of random lines that they draw in the sand about what
Certain
is
ways
moral.
for you to use your bodies is okay for people to pay for. Other
Yeah.
ways, no.
Like, I am having shoulder issues and finger issues from like doing physical labor on a barn. I am using my body. I am, taking shit out of my body to do this job. How is that different than you having sex for money with somebody who's willing to pay? And like, I just truly, the pearl clutching about sex work is exhausting.
Yeah, like I said, there's a different conversation to be had about that, which is this one. I don't care what this guy did so much. It's the
Truly,
hypocrisy that he's so out to get trans people for what he thinks is happening.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really care about sin.
No, I kind of feel, no, it's just, I just can't stand what these people decide is bad.
Yeah.
It really, I find it almost like personally hurtful when they're like, oh yeah, this guy fucked a bunch of teenage girls and that's fine, but this other guy kissed a boy and now he has to be burned at the stake. Yes. Like, it truly is so nonsensical and arbitrary, and it's impossible to keep up with.
I got one last story for you.
Okay.
This one should be quick, I think, but the National Association of Evangelicals, which is the organization that used to be run back in the day by Ted Haggard.
Oh, sure. Classic him.
Anyway, they put out a statement this week saying, we did a survey of our like board members, basically. They actually just said, we released a survey and we found that 98% of evangelical Christian leaders do not want pastors endorsing candidates from the pulpit.
Really?
98%. I was shocked.
Do you have a breakdown? Do you have any breakdowns on that? Like by...
It's a wonderful question because I
Thank
had
you.
so many questions about where are you getting 98% from.
Yeah, because that does not feel reflective, but also, confirmation bias, et cetera.
Right. Like, who did you ask? How did you do the survey? Is this scientific?
Did you ask 100 priests? Because that doesn't feel like enough.
Right. What they just presented the survey result as if it wasn't surprising because their thinking is, the purpose of church is to spread the gospel message, and telling people how to vote, you're bringing something unnecessarily divisive into church to focus on Jesus, focus on the pulpit. Here's a quotation from Walter Kim, who's the president of the NAE. Church leaders should inform, uplift, and draw people into deeper discipleship that impacts how they engage in their communities, including how they vote. Endorsing a political candidate is rarely helpful and most often breeds division. And they pointed out that the 98% number is actually way up from 89% back in 2017. Which
Okay.
all of that sounds sensible, what he's saying, like even from his perspective. Yeah, focus on Jesus, not
But we didn't
politics.
answer the questions.
But it ignores how, one, pastors, usually white evangelical pastors, push politics in church all the time, even if they don't tell people explicitly how to vote. It's very much like, all right, I'm not telling you how to
One party
vote.
out there is saying that you can cut off your penis.
Right. A lot of those winks, like, well, let's talk about abortion instead.
Yeah.
Like, there's no shortage of pastors who spread messages that are anti-LGBTQ, anti-abortion, anti-science, anti-sex, anti-environment, anti-civil rights, anti-women. None of that is directly political per se, but we also know Republicans run on culture war issues rather than like economics, because it's really easy to fire up your base when you demonize groups outside the fold. And when pastors focus on who they hate or which sins are more damning than others, they're effectively telling their churches how to vote.
Yeah.
Like, why give them a name when the winks serve the same purpose?
Truly.
But some pastors, as we've talked about, they still do it anyway because they don't care about the consequences. The IRS, as we've talked about, has very lenient rules when it comes to what nonprofits are allowed to do or not do if they want to keep their tax-exempt statuses. The Johnson Amendment, as we've talked about, says, all right, nonprofits are good, but you can't tell people how to vote. And as long as you don't do that, you get all the privileges of nonprofits.
And that's how we end up with scorecards.
Yeah, and that's why nonprofits will say, yeah, here's a scorecard of how various congresspeople did on our issues.
Yeah.
Oh, and look, every Republican
I'm not telling you how to vote.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know.
But these 77 Republicans got an A+ from the NRA.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but plenty of conservative pastors still argue that the rules are too onerous, and they've tried to goad the IRS into take away our tax-exempt status. In fact, here's our pastor endorsing a candidate from the pulpit, and here's the file in case you missed it. Like, come on after us. But the IRS doesn't do it. So I'm not going to get into the whole Johnson Amendment issue.
Yeah.
But this is very much a thing. We know churches endorse candidates from the pulpit. We know the IRS doesn't act on it. And so going back to the NAE survey, I asked them, hey, where's like the methodology? What question did you ask? Who'd you survey? They did not respond to me.
No.
But I did find this in their like articles. The Evangelical Leaders Survey is a monthly poll of the board of directors of the NAE. They include the CEOs of denominations and representatives of a broad array of evangelical
CEOs of
organizations, including missions,
denominations.
universities, publishers, and churches. Yeah, some of these ministries have CEOs. They know what they are. Here's the thing. Their board of directors has exactly 118 people, many of whom are not regularly in the pulpit. So, like, the survey is not representative of the people who
So it's
deliver
literally just
sermons. It's our boys.
Some people in the office.
Yeah. We asked the buddies in the office.
We asked around. Oh, cool. Good science, guys.
Like, it's easy for these guys to say pastors should focus on the gospel because that is the company line. But saying that is ridiculous, like, that's like a commentator saying basketball stars should shut up and dribble instead of speaking out on political issues.
Right.
Or a neighbor who says, you know, I just focus on schools and my family and I don't pay attention to politics or elections.
Oh, that's my dad.
You can't untangle the two from politics because all of that is inherently political. And as many pastors will tell you, if you spend all your time promoting Jesus-like ideas, like helping the poor, feeding
Get
the
super
hungry.
fucking liberal in a hurry.
Yeah, that sounds like socialism real fast.
Yeah.
And in fact, a sermon that seems uncontroversial can be misconstrued by conspiracy theorists. It creates a kind of backlash that can suffocate a church. So this idea that the NAE says 98% of pastors say you should not endorse candidates, like, no. A more honest response was found like in a 2020 Pew Research Center survey that asked believers, how often do you hear politics in the pulpit? And you know what they responded?
All the fucking time.
Yeah, 2/3 of congregations heard at least one sermon mentioning the election during the fall of 2020. 67%. And among evangelicals, it was 71%.
Wow.
Higher than any other group. And by the way, 22% of evangelical churches encouraged voting. 48% of evangelical people said, we heard sermons discuss issues, candidates, or parties. Like, that's more realistic in terms of what's going on out there.
I wonder, though, if they're...
And those aren't even white evangelicals. Those are evangelicals
Writ
clear.
large.
So if you talk about white evangelicals, those numbers would be higher. And by the way, if the NAE gave a damn about any of this and wanted churches to avoid politics, they could always say that. They could always announce that pastors who endorse candidates will have their churches kicked out of the NAE, that they openly condemn churches that try to tip the scales for a candidate. They do not do that at all.
It's just, I wonder if they are trying to, this is me giving them a lot of credit, trying to sort of shift the narrative of like, hey, see, all of your peers don't like talking about politics. Don't you hate talking about politics? You know what I mean? Of like just trying to will it into reality.
This is a good year for them to say, maybe don't tell people to vote for Trump because he's going to lose and that's not going to look great for them. Like, maybe that's the thinking.
I didn't think about
But again,
that.
we're giving them the benefit of a doubt, and they don't deserve it because they've never taken any steps to actually put a stop to it.
Yeah.
They're just saying, like, hey, what should we do? Oh, we should do the right thing? Oh.
I mean, guess.
You guys are never going to believe this. Our organization believes you should do the right thing. Anyway.
So brave.
We're going to walk away now, and if you do the wrong thing, we're not going to say anything.
Right. But we would sure like it.
We would sure like it if you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It'd be nice for us.
Hey, you could support this show by going to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast. You can find us. There's a Discord server. That link is in the show notes. There's a Facebook group that is invite only. It's private, rather. You have to answer like two easy questions.
I haven't invited anybody.
Sorry, yeah, we're not inviting people. That requires going on Facebook.
Okay.
You can also leave a review on iTunes and everywhere else.
And this review is from...
Yes.
Okay, it is from a somewhat punny guy. It's from July. As a straight white man, I must say that Jess's latest rant about toxic masculinity was quite upsetting to listen to. The guy complaining about her rants obviously tuned her out and never listened to the details. Otherwise, he never would have said that to her. That she has to put up with that nonsense is what upsets me. This is a podcast that highlights some of the worst things about mankind. I find it fascinating, informative, disturbing, and sometimes entertaining. The contrast of one person looking at these topics from a logical, well-researched perspective, I think that's you, and one reacting live works very well here. As someone who had little direct exposure to the sorts of people they talk about, it helped me stay sane when I had a boss who would spout conspiracy theories on a nearly daily basis and not listen to any logical counterpoints. While I long since got away from him, I continue to listen to this podcast every week. And that is from a somewhat punny guy. That's very nice.
Thank you. We will... What's in the bonus episode?
The bonus episode, I actually have a few things I wanted to talk about. A movie called Wicked Little Letters, which was just outstanding. Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley, just so good. And I think it's the Decameron, I think is how you say it. It's another Netflix show that takes place in the Dark Ages, during the plague. And apparently, I was just reading enough about it. It is the story that they tell. It's about 10 people trapped in a villa in Italy. And it's one of the...
You had me at trapped.
Well, it's one of the oldest stories of all time in terms of like the first people to like write stories. And so it's this weird, it's kind of a farce. It's a sex comedy. It's funny. It's sad. It's really touchy. And there's a few things I want to talk about that I really enjoyed. I think I'm going to watch it again. And then my husband and I watched a horror movie called Stop Motion. That was very good. And we also watched the movie 10. Starring Bo Derek and Dudley Moore. And I would love to talk about all of those things with you.
All right. We'll see you in the bonus.
Goodbye.